sir. Wow, that is fast.
KLM at your service.
Yeah, wow. Incredible.
Please, may I...
We zitten Gerda en Dick.
Hartelijk welkom op dit jubileumcongres, voorjaarscongres. We hebben daar nog een staartje aangebreid voor morgenochtend. Maar we hebben een prachtige spreker vandaag. Een van, ze zeggen wel een van de drie, maar wij zijn een van de eerste twee mensen, oprichters of founders, vaders, zeg maar even op het gebied van NLP. En de introductie zal door Angelique straks gebeuren.
Dankjewel. Als jullie met mijn soort Engels overweg kunnen, ga ik dat doen om voor Frank te laten horen wat ik zeg. En zo niet, dan kun je altijd weglopen. So, good morning, Frank. I want to tell something first. This morning in my room there is a safe with digits you have to push in to make it close and open. And I had great difficulty with closing it and opening it. And I got the receptionist coming to my room to help me out. And there it was. In my mind it was, I have the only safe in this hotel that doesn't work. So I kept thinking that, and that didn't help. So she came and she very sweetly made it very clear that I had one digit too little. So I didn't have the full 6 digits. So there I was thinking, in our minds here in Holland, there are only 2 founders of NLP. It's our model of the world. So sometimes it's very hard to understand that they were 3. We didn't know. Say up to 2 years ago, we were sure there were only 2. And yesterday we had the honor of already getting Mr. Frank Pucelik from the airplane to this village. And we heard a lot of stories. He will obviously tell them himself, but they were so interesting about the first years of NLP and how they, worked things out. Here we think, oh, one day there's NLP. So we heard about Virginia Satir and Milton Erickson and how they copied them. And it sounded like it's just done over a month or so. But they went on, exercising, trying for hundreds of thousands of hours. Now we know. So it's all in the book. In the book you can buy if you are not a new member. New members always are favored, so they get it. So the other ones are going to buy it, and it's only 15 euros, so that's really not expensive, but you can read so much that is so exciting about the beginning years of NLP. And Mr. Frank Pucelik did us the honor to feel touched by even the translation. And the title we found for it, it's with the word heart in it, and he really did us an honor to say he was touched in his heart by it. So for me, I'm sure we are going to love this man. And so I'd rather not wait and just introduce to you one of the 3 founders of NLP. It's Mr. Frank Pucelik.
So my name is Frank Pucelik. It's interesting to have the last 5 or 6 years to be kind of pulled back into the NLP field, which is fine with me. I'm happy about that. I never left it actually. I kind of took it with me to different places. If you want me to go through a very brief history and then let you ask questions if you have any, I'll be happy to do that. Yeah? No? At some point I hope you get tired of hearing about how things started, but 1971, let's see if I can give you the abridged version. I grew up in San Diego, California, not happily, and living with my parents was not a lot of fun. I was basically raised to not do well, and for most of my younger years I was successfully accomplishing not doing well. I went to college when I shouldn't have. I flunked out in 3 semesters, and flunking out of college in 1965 in America was not the smartest time to be flunking out of college. I got a letter from Uncle Sam, and Uncle Sam said, you're not in school, we have something else for you to do. So I spent 4 years in the military, a year in the jungle, and I was what's called a corpsman, if you know what that means, medical personnel. But I was with a platoon in the jungle, and so there were about 20 of us that were trying to stay alive and my job was to put them back together when somebody else blew them up or shot them. And I saved most, lost a few. I went to the war expecting to die because I figured I was the kind of guy who gets killed there. And every day waiting for the ultimate truth to happen. And strange, I didn't get killed. And the next thing I knew, I was home and had no plans to be home in America, none at all. People spitting on me because I had my uniform on. That was real fun. Vietnam veterans were not the most well-liked people in America at the time. And as I came home considering myself to be one lucky guy, and after 2 or 3 days I didn't wear my uniform in public again. And re-entering after, so here I am, a mess to start with. I go to the war and whatever's left of me that's worth anything, plus all the bad stuff, is destroyed. I came out of the jungle lean, mean, and completely ruined, psychologically. So I went back to university, to the same one I'd flunked out of. My attitude was slightly different. I wore a bayonet to class, which helped. And didn't have many arguments in class after that with professors or anybody else. Pretty much was crazy and dangerous and was trying to figure out how to be a human. So I started studying psychology, obviously. Well, I think the same way most of us get into the field, right? Trying to figure out what's wrong with ourselves. We never figure it out, so we help other people instead. And you know how it works, right? Okay. So then our clients pay us to work, to use them as metaphors to work on ourselves for the rest of our lives. Psychotherapy, great profession. Okay. So my attitude was a lot different after the war. My assumptions were a lot different, and I got incredibly good grades. I got 1 B in the rest of my college, and the professors almost didn't make it because it was a B that I thought was appropriate. Everything else was A's, but it still didn't make me eligible to transfer to Santa Cruz, which I wanted to do as a junior. Santa Cruz was the most difficult university and one of the 3 most difficult universities in America to get into in those days. And it was for the elite of the elite of the elite. And I certainly wasn't one of those. But the University of California system had a special program for veterans. Told them, I was 4 years older than most of them, so that gave me an advantage that I could actually act like a peer and feel like it or think like it, but I'm still a mess. I transferred there in '71. Met another guy who was also a mess, and scraggly haired, stringy, bearded, skinny, God, awful looking young man who also was from his own war in Oakland. And he grew up on the streets in Oakland, and for a skinny white kid, that's not a good place to grow up. So he was dangerous and crazy as well. And so we fit together quite nicely. He had learned Gestalt kind of accidentally. He was a warehouseman for science and behavior books. And he worked in the warehouse in the mountains of Santa Cruz. And And Becky and Bob Spitzer had given him a job so that he could make some money. He was a drummer, or a rock and roll drummer, and other things. And so, kind of, Becky's a person who saves people, you know, and if she sees somebody she can save, she saves them. So they saved Richard and gave him a job and sent him up to Santa Cruz. And in amongst the stuff in the warehouse was the manuscripts and videos that Bob Spitzer had purchased from Fritz's whatever you leave behind when you're dead. And they have a name for that, I don't remember what it is. But so, and Bob knew Fritz and knew about the manuscripts and so forth, and was hoping someday to use them to write a book and so forth. Well, Richard found him, and Richard started watching the videos and so forth, and so when Spitzer came up to pay him or give him orders or whatever, he was talking like Fritz. And so Bob thought that was interesting, so he said, here, take the stuff and write a book. The book's half finished, finish it. And Richard did, and it was the best book on Gestalt I've ever read. It was tremendous. It's called The Gestalt Approach in Eyewitness to Therapy, right? And terrific book on Gestalt. I had studied Gestalt at the university that I went to. I studied Gestalt, encounter group, sensitivity training, Rolfing, Rogerian, everything I could study to try and figure out what's wrong with me. You know how the game goes, right? When you find the right system and people tell you this is it and this is the one that's going to help you and fix you, and you know you've been messing with all those other stupid systems, now you finally found the right one. And so the right one always turned out not quite to be the right one. Anybody else go through that? Okay. So the right answer always seemed to not quite be the right answer. Interesting, helped some psychodrama, Gestalt dream therapy, Gestalt did them all. Did them all from the bottom to the top and trying to fix this thing, right? No, didn't. It was nice, but it just seemed to me like they were all a con job. They were all like you have to trick yourself into believing that maybe you're okay, and if you just can believe that long enough, then sooner or later maybe you'll actually believe yourself. Right? Which I figured if that's psychotherapy, then maybe I'm not much interested in this stuff. So, Richard was trying to do Gestalt groups and make some money. I was doing Gestalt groups and making some money. From the students at UC, we met each other. We decided we were both kind of equally insane and equally needy for money, so we joined up and started training students at the university in Gestalt in 1971. He and I were partners, and yeah, we were. Richard doesn't have friends, but as much as he has friends, I was his. And Richard's an interesting character. You guys probably know as much about that as I do. He's a good copier. I'm a good copier. We were both good copiers, and we could watch the videos and go do it, and we didn't know what the hell we were doing, but nobody else did either, including Fritz. Okay. If you study Gestalt, right, it's impossible to learn to do Gestalt because the structure of most of the theory is complete crap. Okay. Excuse me, Gestaltists, if you've been studying Gestalt for 10, 15 years, I understand, I did too. Okay. But, you know, retroflexion. You must identify retroflexion. Retroflexion, what the hell is that? Your stomach tells you what retroflexion is. You must feel it right here. You know, and I'd see therapists we'd watch the videos with Fritz, and they were the best cartoon movies I'd ever seen. Okay? You know, and Fritz would look at somebody, and he'd talk to somebody for like 5 minutes, right? And he'd put your mother in the chair, and tell your mother, I hate you. And 40, 50 therapists would be watching. And in the videos, and you could see them. And you could see them all go. mother in the chair. Why? Retroflexion. It is a retroflexion. You know, and then we used to laugh like crazy because he would say he would put your mother in a chair, they beat, fine, scream, yell, they beat up the chair, they break it into pieces, they throw the chair out the window, whoa, you're okay now. Catharsis and you're done, right? So, and these people are like, oh my God, you're wonderful, you're wonderful. I'm going, what kind of stupid theater is this? You know, I was like, what? Right? And so, you know, and so great fun, right? So Richard and I both go, oh, that's for us. Beating up the chair, tossing crap out the window. Yeah, good. Okay, we're ready for that one. Yeah, we can do that. You know, I know how to say, put your mother in the chair. I don't know why you say that, but and so he would finish, and the client would leave, and the people would say, Mr. Pearl? Yes. Mother in the chair? Who? Why? And he says, retroflexion. You know, and the people go, so why? Retroflexion. You must recognize retroflexion. Retroflexion, when one human being loves or hates something about themselves, they have some kind of psychological boundary against hating or loving themselves, so they see the same thing in somebody else, and they hate or love that person for it. It's obvious. People go, why the mother in the chair? You know? And he goes, you don't understand it. Retroflexion. And they're going, how the hell do you know? Right? And he says, right here. And I watched 45 therapists in this group do this. Mr. Pearl? Nothing. You know, and we'd start yelling at the television, right? Eat Mexican food! Eat Mexican food! You know, because if you want to have retroflexion, you must eat Mexican food the night before. Okay. Otherwise, stomach don't talk. You know, and so us irreverent researchers are making so many great jokes out of the videos of pearls. No, I know, we were terrible and it was the wrong thing to do, I understand. Okay. So we're trying to figure out what in the hell, right, is going on. So we just did it, the same stuff, right? So then along comes John Grinder, who's this brand new hotshot, straight out of Rockefeller Center, post-PhD transformational grammaticist. You know, and we go, what the hell is that? But going to his classes and stuff, and they're like, this sounds pretty cool. So we invited him to come and observe our groups, and Richard and my group. So, you know, for about 4 months, he said, no way. He was a political activist, right? When he thought that psychology teaches people to do what the government wants them to do. So he didn't want to have anything to do with that. Because he's trying to teach people how to not do what the government wants them to do. So he said, well, I'm going to help you control the masses? No way, right? So after 4 or 5 months of us twisting his arm and begging and using incentives, he decided to come and watch. And you know, he's there, and he sits in the back of the room, doesn't say a thing the whole time, barely moves, and we're wondering, like, is he dead? You know, like, what is this? You know, so he's like, and after the end of the group, he'd stand up and walk out and go home, nothing. And so after 2 or 3 times, he'd stay, and afterwards, when the students would leave, he'd come up to us and he'd say, okay, you're using reverse reference in this situation. Whenever you see reverse reference, you're doing this and this and this. Are you doing that on purpose? And we're going, what's a reverse reference? Okay. And he'd say, oh, yeah, okay. Well, that means when the actor of the action of the verb is, instead of the actor of the action, they are the receiver of the action. And it sounds like the world is against me. Nobody likes me. Everything always happens to me. Okay? And when people communicate like that, they have taken themselves out of the natural form of language and created a backward sentence, basically, so that they are the victim of the world rather than the creator of the world. Okay, obvious? Okay. So the other thing and And we started thinking about that, and we went back to the videos with Fritz and started again several times, and we're picking up that the clients that he had where he said, put your mother in the chair, were people who had used reverse reference in several sentences during his casual conversation with them. Okay? And this drove us crazy. Fritz is a thresholder, which means he doesn't respond systematically. He has to get hit by a symptom many, many times before it creates enough of a reaction in him to do something. He made us crazy that way, because we're looking for critical events and systematic behaviors compared to those events. Well, here's the event, nothing, 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 the event, action. Okay, well, if you're watching it, then that means that that's not the event. That we missed something else. Okay, wait. Why did he do that? Well, it wasn't this, because that's already happened 4 or 5 times. It wasn't this, it wasn't. We knew everything that it wasn't, but we couldn't figure out what the hell it was. Until we went back again and again and again. We wore out videos, because we were watching tapes, and we got smart enough to keep the original, make copies and wear out the copies, right? Because I don't know if you remember with videotapes, after 100, 150 times watching them, they're gone, they're dead, the pictures are unintelligible. So, we started to notice that every time Fritz had too much training from Sigmund, okay? And so Fritz had some of Sigmund's basic assumptions. I'm not even sure he knew that, but Fritz really focused on relationships with parents. Fritz believed that most problems that people have come from their relationships with their parents, or grandparents, depending on the situation. Right? So he's talking to a person, when he meets them, how old are you? Are you married? Are your parents alive? And we noticed that whenever the client, whenever he'd say anything directly or indirectly about the mother, in this particular case, this would happen on the client's face. Okay, you see that? Okay, and what's the guy in San Francisco? He calls those micro expressions or something. Okay, but basically what he saw is a very, very quick, small calibration. Okay, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. Okay, so, and when he saw that, watch if you can, see if you can see right in here in my body. So I'll try to do it again. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da, mother. Yeah. Okay. So not only did he see this, but he would tighten. Okay, a little bit. Okay, but he didn't do anything. Next time he heard mother, next time he saw that negative calibration, he would tighten a little more. Tighten a little more, tighten a little more, until the 5th or 6th time, you could literally see him do this. And that's when he noticed the pain right here in his stomach. Okay? So in other words, it took 4 or 5 events of him noticing, not consciously, but coding. Fritz was a Keno, he coded everything in his body. Right? Okay? So it took him 4 or 5 times before he had enough of a sensation to consciously register the sensation and then act. So what is he doing? He's heard backward sentences and he sees the negative calibration about mom. Okay, so if the world is against me, what's that sound like when you turn it around? I am against the world. Well, you can't be against the world, so who are you against? Mom. So put your mother in the chair and tell your mother that you hate her. Simple, simple, simple. 1 calibration and reversed references 3 or 4 times in a 2 or 3 minute span. Magic. Okay. Fritz taught people for 10 years how to do that and they couldn't do it. They watched him work and they couldn't do it. Okay. Or at least not systematically, if they could do it at all. Okay. You understand? So we had now suddenly had a tool that we could use to teach people how to do that in 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 10 if you're fast, right? So we suddenly understood that with that and a lot of other questions that John was asking, that, this is really cool. we really liked it. And basically we got together, the three of us, to answer our own questions. And there was never any intention for anybody else in the world to know what we were doing. That's not what we got together for. We wanted to know the two most important questions. Number one, why is it that the people in the world that are incredibly good at something almost never are able to pass on that knowledge to other people? When they die, that incredible magic expertise dies with them. And I get sad sometimes when I realize that there are some people, none of you of course, that don't pay a lot of attention to the meta model other than kind of, it's how you ask questions and it's how you do this and so forth, which I think it's much more. The meta model, I don't challenge the meta model when I hear meta model violations, almost never. I don't need to, that's not what it's for. What it's for is to show you how people think. So that when you learn how people think, you can then figure out how people are creating their skills or how people are creating their problems or how people are hurting themselves with their thought processes. And to me, the simple, obvious fact is that we are a product of our thought processes. You create yourself all day long by how you think, not necessarily what you think. I mean, what is decided by where the room you're sitting in, by what you see and so forth. But you know the idea that several people can look at the same thing and see something totally different. Well, it's not because of what they see, it's because of what they did with it. Okay, so we create our life every day, all day long, by how we think. Okay, and I think the real tragedy, and the tragedy that John and Richard and I became aware of, was that there's no school for thinking. There was no school for thinking. Here's how winners think. So you should learn to think similarly. We pass on chemistry, but we don't pass on wisdom. And that's insane.
Philosophy?
The philosophy chunks up, way up. And if your goal is to get chunked up and you do it far enough to come to basic life-producing principles, then and that's an important task for the human race, because the principles that we have, of course, are the guiding principles that control all life. But the difficulty with a lot of philosophy is that it never turns around and goes back down to behavior. Okay, so in a very simple way to think of NLP, as far as I'm concerned, is that remember, we were born in the middle of the heyday of the humanistic movement, okay? And in the middle of the place where the humanistic movement was blossoming. Carl Rogers was there, Virginia was there, Fritz was there, Milton Erickson was a little bit a ways, but all of this Reichian, Freudian, Freud was on the East Coast, thank God. But anyway, okay, but all of this incredible development was happening with Esalen and MRI in Palo Alto or in San Francisco. I mean, it was the blossoming world of the humanistic movement. And the best therapies of the day were somewhere between 20 and 30% effective. The best. Most of them were far less. Well, that doesn't make any sense. If this is the answers to the world's problems and the best magicians of the day fail with 7 out of 10 clients, what is that? What the hell is going on? Number one. Number two, the whole concept that Fritz couldn't teach people to be Fritz, Virginia couldn't teach people to be Virginia, and so forth. What the hell? What's going on? So when we began to understand that, we realized that when Fritz tried to teach people what Fritz does, what did he do? He chunked up, meaning he made up words to explain his ideas and behavior. Okay, he never talked about his behavior, his exact behavior. He made words for it: retroflexion, confluence, introjection, and so forth. Okay, so he chunked up. The more you chunk up, the farther you are away from behavior. Okay, we have one minor problem in the world. The only thing that's actually real in this world between people is behavior. Words, you can't communicate with words unless those words are a description of specific, measurable, observable behavior. Okay? Because the only truth that exists between people is behavior. Okay? So if you're trying to tell me how you do something, and you don't describe behavior, then I'm in trouble. Because every word you use means something different for you than it does for me. See, there is no such thing as an accurate communication between people using words. Unless those words describe specific behaviors, or in other words, unless you have chunked down. So all, damn near all, of the humanistic psychologies were busy becoming academic, busy becoming intellectual. Well, of course, we have parent, adult, and child, we have the ego states that involve and all this talk that had no behaviors in it. So what happens, people can't learn from it. That they can't do it. But I met thousands of people that could talk about TA. And I never saw anybody but Eric Byrne and maybe Tabby Kaler that could actually do it. Okay, at the level that those two guys did, and Hedges Capers, maybe the three top TA guys in history, okay, in those days, in the 70s in California. And so we went, well, wait, let's go the other way. Let's take it all to behavior, everything. So let's chunk down and find out if that helps. Helps? What did we discover? We discovered all the patterns that the different psychotherapies were using, okay, you understand? By chunking down a person when you talk to them about their problem, you chunk their problem down, what do you end up with? The recognition of the patterns they use to create their problem. Whoa, wait a minute. Do you understand? Like all of a sudden we could match the client's difficulty to a system that had that pattern recognized and utilized. Do you understand what that means, guys? You know, I don't know how knowledgeable you are about the humanistic movement history. You probably know more about it than I do. But until the early 70s, there was a different paradigm in psychotherapy. The paradigm was, if you wanted to be a psychotherapy, you had to have a theory of personality. Okay? And then that theory of personality was your home base that you then created a system to work with it, to create it. Okay, so here's what a healthy person is. Okay? Now, my client walks in, and they're unhealthy, they're broken, so I measure them to see what's broken compared to my model. Okay? Now, whatever's broken, I fix. And so that they become healthy. Okay? Right? That was psychotherapy. From when we stopped cutting people's heads open for psychotherapy and started when the birth of talk therapy was guys, it was a revolution. Because before that, nobody believed that you could talk and change anything about a person's mentality. Because talking didn't change, talking was a symptom of. Okay, and it didn't do anything. Talk therapy was the birth of the idea that you could turn it around and go the other direction. That was a huge revolution. Now, here's the next one. The client is broken. So we have to fix them depending on our theory of personality. Well, here comes the wars. Well, my theory of personality is better than your theory of personality. Okay. Gestalt is better than TA. You know, TA says what? Just there's not 2 parts, there's 3 parts, you idiots. Okay. Parent, adult, and child. And Fritz says, no, what adult? There's no adult. You know what Fritz called adult? Phony. Right? Why? Because he's a Keno and he hated digitals. Hated them. Right? And was never mind, married to them. Okay, no. So what did we do? You know, and I don't know if you know this, but one of the things that NLP, God, that word cracks me up. One of the things that we did that I am incredibly proud of is we reversed that paradigm. We destroyed the people in all of the conferences and so forth with the archaic idea that the model was more real than the client. So we said, no, wait. We demonstrated by chunking down the fact that the client has a different pattern than your psychotherapy. So they speak English and you speak Greek. And you're not going to communicate. Sorry. If you want to work with this guy, what do you have to do? You have to speak English. Okay, you understand? Oh, English? Oh, okay. English. Or Gestalt, or TA, or Freudian, or Reichian, or. But what does that mean? It means you have to know all the different systems. Okay, well, if you have a meta model, you can learn a system in a matter of months, as opposed to 10 years. You see, one of the difficulties that most psychologists had before the 70s was to study Gestalt was a 10-year proposition minimum, maybe more. So I studied Gestalt. Okay, now I decided I want to study something else. Well, okay, well, depending on what it is, unless it's Freudian, because that's 25 years. But, but I got another 10 years. Well, you don't have a hell of a lot of 10 years to put into learning 3 systems out of the 20 that are available. You understand? Our lifespan doesn't go for it like that. We don't live long enough to become a polyglot, multi-system knowledgeable. Unless what? Unless we have a meta model. Okay, so that was the purpose of NLP. That's why it started. That's what we wanted to chunk down, and we wanted to recognize the patterns of therapies and match them. Now, wait a minute. What if the client's system of creating their own difficulty doesn't have any correlate in any system that you know of? Okay? You understand? So what do? Easy. I take a piece of this, a piece of that, a piece of that, boom, 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 and I build a brand new form of psychotherapy in 2 minutes that fits the client perfectly. Easy. If you're fluent in 10 languages and the client mixes 3 languages, but you're fluent in 10, and including those 3, but they mix 3, can you talk to them? Sure you can. How? You mix the same way. Obvious? No? Okay. Sure. Okay, well, in 1973, that was a revolution that changed the nature of psychotherapy. Okay, and we led the charge. I don't think we ever got credit for that, which is probably irrelevant. I'm used to not getting credit for things. So, but we changed that, and that's one of the things that I'm most proud of from all of the work we did for all those years. And got we had some real advantages. I mean, not only did we study 3 of the best because they were close to us, we had opportunity. But having Gregory Bateson live 20 feet away from where we did the majority of our experimenting and testing and so forth, and having him walk around, and say, "Ooh, very good, very good," and then my favorite phrase of Gregory's was, "Shoddy epistemology." Okay, that was his way of, don't do that, forget it, go a different direction. So, and when Gregory said shoddy epistemology, we didn't argue. We stopped, tossed it, and started a different direction because he was a relatively smart guy. So, we worked together in 73 and 74. Some of the guys, the original guys, graduated. They were all graduate students. They weren't undergraduate students. They were all graduate students. They graduated. Some of them were undergrads, but they went on to their lives and other things, taking the skills that they learned with them, and they understood them as meta. And I talked to several of them, and they didn't know NLP was meta. Okay, because they'd gone on with their lives doing what they did, and they never knew. When they heard people talk about NLP, what's that? I don't know. So, 73 and a half, 74, the second generation of meta kids joined in, and we went from about 12 to about 6, and then back up to about 14. So second generation. Names you don't know. Third, and then we worked the same way. The structure, that's when John and Richard got much closer together, and I became kind of the third person. And my job was to take care of the team and basically be a spy for John and Richard and myself. We would tell the team to practice something, do something, figure out something. I'd be part of the team. We'd do it, and then I'd leave and I'd go up to Ben Lomond and join John and Richard, and we'd sit down and we'd then code everything. And they'd write and we'd talk, and I'd tell them what we did, how it worked, and so forth and so on. So they kind of became the recorders of the processes that we figured out in the group. And they had, don't let me mislead you, they were very brilliant and they worked together quite well. And they came up with ideas that they didn't know whether they'd work or not, try this, try that. And then I'd go to the group and I'd tell the group that we'd already done it, and that we wondered if they could figure out how to do it too. So they figured out how to do it too. And then I'd go back and I'd go, yeah, it works, we can do this and this and this and so on. So and then we'd write it up as if we knew about it all the time. You know that down, right? Okay. So then in 75, approximately, some of those people left, and then a few joined us, the third generation. And these are the names you know: Judy DeLozier, Leslie Cameron, Byron Lewis, Diltz, Gilligan, Gordon, McClendon, and all of the originators of NLP. So, my own story, right? I know I meet a lot of people in the NLP world who are originators, and it's always interesting to me because I've never met them, and they're looking at me telling me that they started NLP, and I go, really? Good, yeah, you were almost invisible that whole time, weren't you? I met one woman that is famous and runs around the world. You guys know the name, I'm sure. And she's an originator. And she said that she was doing a group, and some of the people that I know is in Russia. Some of the people that I know were in that group. Some of the guys who know me, and a couple who work for me because I sent them, right, to learn, right. And they come back and they're telling me stories about how this person was the original creator of NLP with John and Richard. And I'm like, great. So arranged for me to have lunch with her. So I had lunch with her. And I'm sitting there and I said, I understand you're one of the originators. And she goes, yeah. John and Richard and I started NLP together. And I go, yeah, really? When was that? And she said, oh, that was in 1981. And I said, 1981? NLP started in 1981. She said, yeah, didn't you know that? And I went, yeah, well, that's pretty good. You were only 10 years late. NLP started in 1971, and you weren't there. And she's like, oh, you were? I go, yeah, darling, I was. And so she promised me she would change her literature, change her speeches, and all that. And this about 6 years ago, and obviously she hasn't changed anything. So for me, it's a little difficult. I left in late 76, early 77, by invitation. Lots of intricacies there. So my first wife by that time was John's wife. My second wife by that time was Richard's wife. Judy DeLozier, you guys know who Judy DeLozier is, yeah? Judy DeLozier was my first wife and mother of our son and a good friend, and I don't know if you guys have all done the same craziness where you love somebody that you don't like. Anybody? You marry somebody that you love, and you know from before that actually I don't like this person very much, but I sure do love them. Anybody? So you marry for love, and and when that disease goes away in a couple of years, you're left with this jerk you don't like. Yeah? No? Am I the only one who does it? No. Okay. So we decided to part, but we both had an equally strong love of our son, and we made an obvious agreement with each other to remain friends. Our son would never get caught in the crap that divorced parents do. It's like I'm the good one, he's the bad one, and so forth and so on. We never did that to Eric at all, and we discussed our divorce with Eric before we divorced, and we told him, as lovingly as we could, that this had absolutely nothing to do with him. Kids take responsibility for those things, and you have to be really, really careful about that, and make sure that they understand that it's not about them. And we looked at him at one point and we said, we believe that you deserve to have two happy parents. And for us to be two happy parents for you, that means that your mom and I are not going to live together. And he cried, and we told him, we thought about staying together unhappily for you, but we don't think that's best for you either. It's not good for us, and he goes, it's 3, and he looks at us and crying, and he says, I want you happy. Yeah. Incredible. We were both blessed with a very special kid. And so then I became single parent father, and for the next 4 years. I have great respect for single parent mothers. I was one. Okay. And oh my God, that is not easy. Okay. Beautiful in some ways, but my life revolved around his needs for the next 4 years. And I had to try and have a career and have a research group and have a job, and luckily I had 3 Labradors. Okay, beautiful. 3 big female Labradors, 2 blacks and a yellow. Best babysitters in the world. So we went on, the 3rd generation came in. We were together for a year and a half or so I was with that group, and then I was invited to leave. Then John and Judy and Leslie and Richard went off to become famous and make money. And 5 of the original, very first guys were still involved, and they took off. I was gone for a year to Nebraska, then I came back to San Diego. I called the guys and said, come on. And 5 of the actual original people moved to San Diego, joined me. And we opened Meta Institute in San Diego in 1979. And ran it until 1983. Then I left to go to Oklahoma, and they continued for another 2-3 years, and then they split up and went their own ways. But we kept right on going. We was doing the same thing we'd done for the first 7 years or so. It was great, and we finished patterns and finished stuff and finished our research that we were all doing at the time when the team broke up. And then you guys know more about what happened to John and Richard and Judy and Leslie after that than I do. I wasn't there. But hopefully we wanted to answer questions for ourselves, and we had never had any intention of this becoming something that anybody else knew. And I remember in 79 and 80 when people I didn't know were using meta terms, and I was like, who the hell are you? What are you doing talking like that? There's only 15 people who can talk like that. Strategies and rep systems and all of that stuff. So then it's just, and now I look around the world and I meet rooms full of guys like you, and I'm still just blown away. It's incredible. There's other things that we'll talk about. But anyway, any questions before we leave that history behind? Anything you want to know or didn't know or shouldn't know, or can ask me that I won't answer, or any of that kind of stuff? Okay. Question? No? Anybody? Yes.
Question. What's the title of that book you mentioned in the beginning?
The book on Gestalt?
No,
Origins.
Yeah.
Ah, there. Yes, just we. How are you guys planning to do that?
Yeah, well, it's the book, The Origins of NLP.
Yeah.
It's written by both, or edited by both John Grinder and Frank
We're
Pucelik.
introducing this in
Yeah.
Dutch today.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's where you find a lot of stories of the beginning, which we didn't know. That's where Frank's name popped up as being one of the founders, endorsed by John Grinder, so that we could believe it.
Mhm.
And the book is available for 15 euros in Dutch now, here at the seminar, and later it will be much more expensive. And there goes a little booklet with it, with commentaries on it. So, yes.
Yeah, great.
Is that an answer to your question? Yeah.
So it's available here for you, and you know we're trying to make it as easy to buy as possible. It's been in English for a year and a half.
2 years.
2 years, yeah, something like that. It's in Russian, and it's being translated into Japanese. It's being translated into German also right now, and so it's getting into several languages. And I have a book that is called The Reality Wars, and that's available in Russian. And is being printed right now in English, and also being translated into German right now. And we'll talk to you guys about translating into Dutch. I finally decided to write up all of the research that we did on the different parts therapies throughout the entire meta period. And because nobody had ever done that, and that I was responsible for that project anyway. And I'm the only one who knows it before the book was written. The only one, because I was the center, and all the guys who worked on the project did pieces. And so the pieces all came to me, and I put them all together. And I kind of carried it as my baby for 20 years. And then decided not too long ago to turn it loose, to let it go into the world. I'm not even sure why I kept it for so long, but in my opinion, it's the best thing there is, written by anybody ever on DSTs. DSTs, everybody know what I mean when I say that? That means dissociated state therapies. Most of the therapies, the styles or programs or systems of psychotherapy are DSTs. They presuppose an artificial temporary identification of parts or characteristics. Aggressive, passive, compulsive, top dog, underdog, parent adult child, blamer, placator, ego, id, all of those are artificial identifications of characteristics. They're not real, but they're an artifact. And they're an artifact designed to help you understand how you work and how you think, so that you can become more effective as a human being in your life or families or whatever it is. So about 90% of what's called psychotherapy are DSTs. Okay? And they're the ones that fought with each other for years. Okay, so what I tried to do is finish the fight. Okay, once and for all. And say Gestalt is real good with these 4 patterns and these 2 rep systems. TA is really good with these other 5 patterns and these 3 rep systems. Freud is, yes, that's not in this book, not in Origins, but that's in the DST book, Reality Wars. That I'll make sure as soon as it's printed in English, you'll have access to it. It might be now, but I need to check and see what's up. I'm Reality Wars. Reality Wars. That's what DSTs do. That's what psychotherapy is. Psychotherapy is a war between different realities or parts, characteristics. You should be loving. No, you should be strong. Okay, that's a reality war. You understand? And one person says, no, reality is if you're tough and you're strong and you make things happen and you go out there and you take the world. Well, that's a style of life. That's a reality. And other people go, no, you have to be loving and gentle and wonderful and kind and, and help people. And the other reality goes, okay, sure. You help me, I need some beef. So the realities clash. Okay. Well, when you have an internal conflict, when you have an argument with yourself, that is a war between two different realities, two different rule systems, two different truths. Okay. So how do you solve those wars? Well, that's what psychotherapy is about, is how to solve those wars, how to turn the warring sides into cooperative sides that have skills that help each other or support each other. Okay, we call that psychotherapy. Okay, so reality wars is the super therapy. And I don't mean super mean great, I mean super meaning all-encompassing. Okay, we took the best 15 psychotherapies of the day, chunked them all down, and put them all together. So, and it's great. But we also discovered other interesting things that I'll be willing to show you if you like. But the human organism seems to have built into it a very skillful genetic process for solving internal conflict. And it's for you to have problems, you have to really work. It's difficult to be nuts. Okay? And it really requires a lot of work, and you have to be really, really clever. You have to create crazy connections. You have to build realities that have no verification in your life or in your sensory experience. It's a lot of work to be crazy. Okay, but we're humans, and when we decide to do the work, if you want to be nuts, you got to do the work. Okay, well, we have built into us a very natural step-by-step process to solve conflict. I'm sorry, but human beings are built in a way that you're going to have internal conflict because you have different senses. Okay, does anybody understand what I mean by that? Okay, your skin has different rules than your eyes have. And some of those rules are contradictory. So depending on what happens in your life, you're going to enter a situation where you try to use both of those rule systems at the same time, and it's not going to work. One of them's going to dominate. Otherwise you can't do anything. So one of them will take over, and the other one's not going to like that. Okay? Because you didn't do it right. Okay? You were strong when you should have been loving. None of you have ever heard any of that in your head, right? Okay. How could you say something like that? It wasn't their fault. Okay. So in any of those kind of terms that are happening in your head are indications of conflict. Okay. Well, if I need 5 languages to get along in the world, but every time I encounter an event, one of those languages is more useful than the others, then what should I be able to do? Shift to whichever one is more valuable for the situation. Does that mean anything bad about the others? No. Okay? Because at other situations, they will lead, and I will support. So it's kind of like you have 5 friends with very different skill sets. Okay, well, human beings end up with arguments between those skill sets and judgments of our behavior. We judge our own behavior by the wrong skill sets. Okay, and we end up with, little by little, we build it stronger, we build it more separate, we start giving it names. Human beings use words to damage themselves. As soon as you name something, it's no longer the thing. It's now got its own life. And that life, there are people who die for words. And words are irrelevant. Words mean nothing. Any word you use means absolutely something totally different to any other human being on the earth. So fighting for words is insanity. at its highest level. You know that we're lining up in groups of thousands to kill other humans because they have a different name for God?
Yeah.
That's frightening.
Yeah.
That's weird. That is the definition of insanity, by the way. If any other species did what we do, we would consider that species beating the lemons out of the way to run off the cliff. Okay? In their last moments of existence. And we would feel sorry for them. They would be extinguishing their species. And that's the judgment that we would make. You know? Killing people because they have a different name for God. Or because one guy wears a towel around his head instead of over his shoulders. Oh, well, really? Well, I'm sorry, we have to kill that dude. You know? What? Well, it's a towel. He said, what's the matter with him? Well, some of them have slant eyes. Well, what? No, I'm sorry, but you're out of here. You know, and we do that crap. You know, and that's the definition of insanity. Okay, so when a species begins to turn on itself, we're one of the few species that runs around killing each other. Most species don't do that because they're smarter than us in some ways. Okay, so anyway, where was I going before I so rudely interrupted myself? So, the conflict, internal conflict, right? So we are built to have 5 senses at least, and an extra one, right? That's kind of different. To have 6 ways or systems to help us get through life, and each one is different. Okay? And as long as those systems support each other and help each other, we are a happy camper. So when we accidentally or otherwise get crossways with ourselves, then terrible things happen. So the point, I remember now, the point was, we have a natural system of health, of solving conflict and turning it into cooperation internally. It's beautiful. And it's built into us, all of us. And every time we studied different DSTs, we found the same steps or the same structure again and again and again, except each form of DST had 1 or 2 pieces missing. Okay, interesting? Okay, depending on the bias of the creator. Okay, so Fritz didn't do contracting, meaning he didn't help the person build new strategies. His belief was that catharsis was the end of the game. And that as soon as a person catharted and broke the chairs up and tossed everything out, they were done. They were fixed. You know, which is really a shame, because that's the preparation for the fix. It's not the fix. And so a lot of Fritz's clients, even the ones that were magic, would 2 or 3 years later, they'd have a new problem that they needed help with. A different problem, of course, okay? But dynamically the same. Why? Because it took 2 or 3 years for their unhealthy thought processes to rebuild another problem. Exactly formally the same as the one that was fixed, but with different content. So if it's different content, it's a different problem, right? No, not if you're a meta person. Okay. But Fritz never understood that. You know, do you understand what I mean by, say, contracting? Creating a new, so now you're clean with yourself, you got all your anger and all that stuff out. Now you got these 2 skills. How are these skills going to work together in the future? Okay, now those of us that are fancy speakers, we call that what? Cognitive strategies. Okay, if you don't create new cognitive strategies, you haven't done anything for the person. You understand? They haven't changed. They could scream, yell, beat up stuff and throw it out the window and do all that's all nice, but it's not therapy. It's preparation for the rebuilding of new cognitive strategies. If you don't build a new cognitive strategy, you haven't done anything. Okay? Interesting? Okay, so Fritz didn't do it. On the other side, Eric Burdon, he didn't like catharsis. He didn't like screaming, crying, yelling, and so forth. He wanted everything to be nice and logical and gentle. So he was really good at contracting. but he was contracting crap. Because he had never had the parts cathart. He never got them clean enough so that they could actually contract in a cooperative way. So their contracting was sabotaging each other and making agreements they didn't really believe in. Okay? And so then TA wouldn't work. Why? Because the person would self-destruct in 6 months. Why? Because the cognitive strategies he built were contradictory. And he didn't even know it. Because he didn't use catharsis. He didn't clean up the parts. You can't make a deal between two people that hate each other. You understand? Mm-hmm. You know, you've seen divorced people, right? They're going to agree on anything. They don't agree on that water's good for you. Okay, you know what I mean? Okay, why? Because they absolutely hate each other's guts.
Actually, they hate each other's guts because they feel the parts down in them that come from their upbringing.
Sure.
And that they trigger in each other.
Right, exactly right.
So it's actually the emotional stuff in their bodies that is showing up.
Yeah, bodies, minds, heads, you know, whatever. But yeah, sure. Kinnos, I like Kinnos because Kinnos will tell me, you know, this is stuff from their body.
Yes, it's bodies.
Okay, of course. Yeah. Us visuals think it's stuff from our images, but you know, it's okay. Okay, and you don't talk to an auditor because they'll tell you what body, what images. Can't you hear? Listen to that. Now, that's the problem. So kind of, there's a lot of ways to do it. Okay, so okay, next question. Yes.
Can we use phones in the public?
Can you what?
Use the phones in public?
Microphone.
Oh, can you use it?
No.
They can't hear.
Oh, you can't hear me back there.
No?
Heard.
Oh, her. Oh, yes, sure. No. Nah. Okay. It's very, oh, yes. Good. Thank you so much. I'll try and get a clue here in a minute. So that, are you there? You're not there. Let's return this on. Hello there. You have to put it right in your mouth. Okay. Okay. Her question was, I don't know.
You said that it's all about cognitive processes in divorces, and that a divorced couple is really hating each other's guts.
It happens.
And then I said that, to my experience, it is actually that they trigger their childhood stuff in each other, and that's what they really hate. It's actually something that shows up in themselves. It's not the partner, but something that the partner touches in themselves, coming from childhood.
That's one of the patterns that happens. Yeah. Okay. It's not the only pattern that happens. That's not always the case.
No.
Okay. But it's very common. That's for sure. Okay. Human beings. It would be really nice if human beings had like one or two really basic patterns, and they always use those to create craziness. I'm sorry, they use a bunch. Okay. That's a common one. Yes. Anybody else? Somebody here had a question. Okay, quickly, because then we're going to go on.
Well, it was a question why you were invited to leave.
Why was I invited to leave? Okay. Richard had leverage over me at the time that was enough for me not to question his decision and simply leave. And it wasn't about me. If he would have threatened me or something, he wouldn't be here. Because there was enough interesting stuff between us by that time that he took my wife while she was still married to me. Okay, and did that behind my back, and did that in a very not polite way. And I learned about it when I was told by him that starting right now, you have lost your wife, your career, your partners, your city, your income, and your friends. And I want you out of town tomorrow. And I left. Everything. I lost everything in a 15-minute conversation, everything in my life that was valuable to me. And?
So you still talk? Or not?
Richard and I?
Yeah?
Richard has said about 4 words to me in the last 40 years, and I've said about 3 words to him. And I would be happy to talk to Richard. Richard doesn't want to talk to me. I think he's smart. John and I are both ex-soldiers. And John and I had some perfect understanding with each other about that. And Richard was not a soldier. He was raised in his own world, which is kind of equal to being a soldier. But there are two people in the world that Richard does not intimidate, for sure. Okay, and so that's fine. If Richard ever wanted to intimidate me in some kind of physical way, I would be happy. Because there's a bit of things that I could communicate with him. My preference is that if we meet again, that we're friends, that we're happy, that we're comfortable, and I'm ready to do that. I owe Richard a great deal of positive things. He's instrumental in me becoming a human being again. John is more instrumental in my mind, but the three of us, I think, saved each other's lives. At some point, the three of us got together and said, where would we be if it wasn't for Meta? And Richard and John said, well, he said, I would probably be in prison, and for anti-war and some other stuff, right? And Richard said, yeah, I think I'd probably be dead. And I said, yeah, well, I'm kind of 50-50, one or the other. I'm not sure which. But so the three of us were really instrumental in giving each other value, direction. I have absolutely nothing to complain about as far as what happened to me or anything else. I was given the opportunity to have a career, to have a life, to feel good about myself, to become a good father, which was incredibly important to me. And I travel around the world and enjoy myself and have fun, and people pay me for it. So, yeah, I have to keep making sure I don't tell people that I would do it if they didn't pay. So I don't tell them that.
Where are you now these days?
I live in, your question, where am I now? Where am I living now? Where am I in my head, or where am I in my physical part? Yeah. I live in Odessa, on the Black Sea, Odessa, Ukraine. And I've lived there for about 15 years. I lived in Moscow for 6 years. I lived in St. Petersburg, Russia for 4 years. So I've been 24 years now living in the ex-Soviet system. I love it. Life is interesting. American males are well liked in those countries. Yeah. By the general population, and one particular portion of it, exactly. When I was invited to Russia the first time in 87 by some Russian psychologists that actually made it out of Russia in late 86, early 87, were touring in America and met a friend of mine in San Francisco I was in Oklahoma at the time, called me and said, I've got a bunch of Russians in my house. And I said, you want me to call the police? And she said, no, it's with my permission. And 3 of them want to learn 3 things. And you're the only one that I know who knows those 3 things. Can I send you 3 Russians? So I'm going, sure. It's like sending me 3 Martians. At that time, because I had no knowledge, no intention, no nothing. And the next day, 3 Russians showed up at the Oklahoma City airport. I picked them up. And they were going to stay for 3 days. They stayed for 3 weeks, like good Russians. And we had a ball, and it was great. And I became close friends. They invited me to Moscow. So 2 months later, I got off the plane in 1926 in Moscow. Okay, so I stepped into a time machine. And I had always felt like I was born too late, right, most of my life, because I look at the pictures from the 20s and 30s, and I always felt like wow, the beginnings of things, the creation, the building, the new life, the everything. And I'd always felt, like I missed that. So I got off of the plane in Moscow in 1926, and I'm looking around going, oh my God. I just stepped out of a time machine. The styles, the clothes, all the 20s and 30s. The hairdos, the restaurants, the everything. The guys were all, people in Moscow, they didn't go outside unless they were fixed up. They never went in public without being, wow, perfect clothes, perfect hat. I came from America where the women wore baggy sweatpants and t-shirts to the store. And suddenly here I am in Moscow where the women are, whoa, my God, and the men, everywhere. And the thoughts and the styles and the mentality and so forth. And I went to a conference with 1,000 Russian psychologists, my second day in Russia. And I'm standing there, and I spoke not a single word of Russian. I spoke 2 words of Russian, da and нет. Okay? And so that was it, right? Because I had no intention of going, ever, in my younger years. So there I am in Moscow with 1,000 psychologists, and I found 1,000 of the most highly educated, academically educated people I'd ever met, right? And they were incredible. They were terrific. And they didn't know how to do anything. They're incredibly intelligent, incredibly well educated, and they couldn't do anything. They had no pragmatic skills training whatsoever, 0. So here I am, right, an NLP guy. I'm not very well educated, but I can do everything, right? So we fit together perfect. And they have a tradition there. I don't know how you guys fit into this, but they have a tradition there that says if this is an accredited master of this particular technology, then you don't argue. You listen, you say yes sir, and you do it. Okay? And so suddenly I've got 1,000 incredibly well-educated Russian psychologists who are not arguing with me about this or that. They're doing what I say. And they're learning, and they're polite, they're respectful, and very hungry and very appreciative. And so for a trainer, it's like walking into heaven. And because they just did what you asked for, yes.
And creativity?
And what?
Did they also have creativity?
Creativity. Meaning they stayed away from the police and they... yeah.
Like you were in the first years.
Yeah, no. No, they, as far as... They're designing things all the time, and they're chunking up a lot, and they're very creative in the sense of trying to figure out how to do new things. No, they're trying to figure out new theories and new ideas, and they do that all the time. But it's a waste of time because they don't do anything with it. And one of the major complaints that they had in Russia was that people spend a hell of a long time being smart, but no time at all learning how to actually accomplish something, how to do something. So there were a lot of great theoreticians and great mathematicians and but they can't build a car. They can't, they couldn't, they couldn't figure out how to make anything work. So I got there, and the entire infrastructure in those countries is a god-awful mess, still. And so it's just, it's horrid. For a business consultant, though, oh my goodness gracious, talk about heaven. They didn't, Business 101 was like from Mars for them. So for my career as a business consultant, which is what I was at the time, I wasn't an NLP trainer. I did some of that, but only when my arm was twisted. Okay, so no, the creativity in the sense of playing with words, yes. In the sense of doing something new, no. I trained from Vladivostok to Belarus, to Minsk in Belarus, to where I've gone as far as, if any of you know where a city called Norilsk is, it's in the Arctic Circle, and I was there in December. It was minus 46 when I got off the plane, right? And I didn't realize how really cold that was, you know. And then I decided to take a breath, you know, and my lungs said, "Sorry, we don't do this." You know? And I had forgotten that in the incredibly extreme cold, you must breathe through your nose. You can't breathe through your mouth because number one, you'll freeze your throat, and the air gets to your lungs too cold. Best information available to them, they would still make bad decisions because they didn't know how to think effectively. And so the answer to that was cybernetics. And cybernetics was the skill, the mental skills or strategies that all human beings must learn to use in order to think as a member of a planet and a member of a species, so that every time you do something, you can't just think of yourself or your local area when you do something, because everything you do affects the planet and affects life on the planet. So that the human being, the entire paradigm of human thinking or thought must shift. Okay? So we need the information, and we need human beings to learn to think effectively as cybernetic members of a species and an environment. Simple? Okay. So that answered the world's problem. The one minor problem. They didn't know how to do it. They didn't know how to create the shift in human thought process. We did one. We got information theory worked out. Basically, we have computers now that can give us what we need. Your own computer can do things now that in 1946, 47 was unthinkable. I mean, it was unfathomable. Well, your PC can do things now that nobody expected, much less all the supercomputers we have. But the second one, cybernetics, they didn't know how to build it into the schools. They didn't know how to teach and so forth. So here's Gregory Bateson, who was one of those guys, right? And Gregory Bateson was in Santa Cruz and lived next to us, and we were doing all this stuff. And at one point, Gregory, after probably 8, 9, 10 months of being our friend and working with us and giving guidance and so forth, he took John, Richard, me, Leslie, and a couple more. I think Stephen was there, and 2 more people. I don't remember who they were exactly. But he said to us, he said, you know what we tried to do with the Ombudsman Conference and Macy's, right? And we're going, yeah. And he has a tear in his eye, and he says, well, you have finished that work. You have tools that we didn't have. And you now have the key. You now have the ability to teach people to make the paradigm shift that is necessary for the human race to continue. Now, here we are, college kids and vets and goofballs, and Gregory Bateson is standing there with tears in his eyes telling us that we have finished the knowledge base necessary and the skill base necessary to actually lead the human race to the paradigm shift that is necessary for the human race to survive and for us to have a planet for our grandchildren to live on. Because if we don't make that shift, it's not going to be here. Or the planet's going to be uninhabitable, fairly obviously. So, to say the least, I was impressed is like not a word that fits here, but you understand. It's like I'm going, whoa. And this is not some dork saying something. This is Gregory Bateson, right? And Gregory Bateson is standing there with a tear in his eye telling us that we have just finished the work that the Macy's conference tried to do unsuccessfully. So I took that seriously, and I considered that for myself my responsibility as a trainer or experimenter, as a whatever, to go out into the world the best I can and help people make a shift. Okay? Because if we don't, then you and I have failed. I'm 70, and I don't feel good about what I have allowed to happen in my lifetime. I have allowed this world to get crazier and crazier and worse and worse and worse. And the whole world right now is in a god-awful mess with the wars in, 5, 6 countries and slaughtering people, and I mean, we're in bad trouble. And in my opinion, what I understood was that, wait a minute, religions have tried to take that position and tried to help the people shift to a new kind of thinking, and they failed. And some of the religions have failed so badly that they're now more the problem than they are the solution. Governments tried to do something like that, they failed miserably. Mostly out of self-interest or corruption or stupidity or all of the above. Groups around the world have attempted to do something about that, but they've either not had the training, or they've not been in proper positions, or they haven't had the right connections, or all of the above, or they haven't been spread around the world enough, you understand? Or they haven't been organized in any kind of fashion. And when I, not too long ago, when I kind of realized kind of what you guys are doing everywhere I go, I meet groups like this, and I'm thinking, God damn, it's happening, okay? And I'm thinking, wait, NLP world, meta world, NLP world, we have trained practitioners and master practitioners in every country on the earth. We have trained practitioners and master practitioners at every level of government on every country in the world. We have practitioners in business. We have practitioners with money. We have practitioners in universities. We have practitioners in schools. We have practitioners everywhere on this planet, in every language that I know of. There are training centers in Hanoi, where I tried to bomb that place to someplace else. But anyway, there are training centers everywhere. There are NLP people everywhere. Not only are we positioned everywhere, we're all trained. We're all trained in the paradigm shift that is necessary for the human race to continue. That's what you do in NLP. You remember the beliefs and the values that we have? That the results, you are responsible for the results you create, that everything is part of a system, that there are always meeting each other, sharing the skills and knowledge we have with each other, sharing the connections that we have with each other in order to help other groups, other people, and to get help on developing programs or efforts or projects or whatever to more and more and more and more influence the world in a positive way. Okay, and there are NLP people out there, guys, that are doing things you can't imagine, that are so successful and so important. One NLP guy in Moscow took 7 years working with the Minister of Education in Russia. And the Minister of Education finally gave him permission to create training centers in every region of Russia in order to teach the teachers in every school in Russia NLP. So that the teachers could then turn around and teach the entire Russian population neurolinguistic programming so that they would make that paradigm shift as a country all at one time. All in 1 or 2 generations.
Teach Putin.
That's one guy, the guys that are that old, they're gone. But the kids are the future. And those centers are they're stopped right now because of the war. But until the war started, those centers were being developed in every region of Russia. As soon as the war is finished, we have been told that they will continue the process. But that's one guy, troops. Andrei Pligin, an NLP trainer in Moscow. He also is the principal of a school, right? So he's been using and teaching NLP in his school to his school teachers and school kids for 20 years. Well, the Minister of Education couldn't ignore the fact that when kids go to his school, they excel. In whatever else they do the rest of their lives, they're the best at everything, right? Because those kids are learning NLP from the time they enter kindergarten, okay? Now they don't call it NLP. They don't talk about it like I'm learning the meta model. They just learn to speak it and live it. They learn to build all the rep resources in different rep systems. They learn all the major beliefs of the most successful people on earth. And they build those in and they incorporate those into the kids' lives for all their high school, all their junior high school careers. And those kids are just incredible what they're doing and where they're going. So that's one guy. I could talk for an hour and a half about all the different incredible projects that are happening. Okay. I run treatment programs for young drug addicts and alcoholics, and I built the first ones in America. I now have 5, 3 in Russia and 3 in the Ukraine, that have a success rate that is about 100 times better than the nearest competing treatment program. 100 times better. Okay. In case you don't know, treatment programs for young drug addicts and alcoholics have a success rate usually of a little less than 1%. Sickening? Okay. 2% is considered a pretty good program. Okay. I have the kids who graduate from my program are 98 to 99% successful. Successful for years with the very stiff criteria. That's a little misleading because we lose a little more than half the kids during the program. Okay. So of the kids who start compared to the kids who finish, if the kids who start, our success rate is about 45%. 48%, depending, which is 100 times better than the nearest competitor. Okay, but it's still sickening. I think of it as I'm losing half my kids. So we're working harder. Graduates, if we can get them to graduate, 98, 99%, guys. Nobody does that. Nobody in the world does that. And we do that. Why? Because of NLP. And because I'm fairly clever with some other systems as well. So it's, and we are offering that information program structure to the world, and other countries right now are getting information from us. They want our assistance in setting up similar programs. Okay, we can annihilate drug addiction in young people in the Ukraine in the next 2 years by expanding and working and getting the NLP people from the whole country. Brazil is now getting ready to open a program. Who else? Japan is working on a program, and somebody else. Bo, you guys know Bo, who worked with this organization, did a documentary on the programs in Ukraine. And that documentary, he did an incredibly good job. You guys can be very proud of him. And that program is being finally edited right now. It's a documentary on high-quality treatment programs, right? And it's done in English, I believe. Yeah, in English. It's done in Russian, but it's translated to English and can be translated easily into all the other languages. Incredible. The purpose of it, of course, is to document NLP success in an area where nobody knows how to be successful. You know, around the world, nobody knows how to be successful. Well, we do. Why? Because we have made the shift to the other way of thinking. And when you shift, everything gets easier, better, faster, right? Okay, so Meta International, and it's meta slash or hyphen. Hyphen is the right word, international. And if you look it up on Google or whatever.
Is it .com?
It's, I'm not sure what it is. I can check actually. Meta International. But Meta, if you just look up Meta International, you come up with some company that sells oil valves or something. So it's Meta-International, and